Well, welcome to the Vision Maker podcast. I'm happy to welcome you guys here today as we speak with filmmakers and other industry professionals. I am here today with James Morano, a cinematographer with music videos and branded content. Wow, context. Context too works, I guess.
I do need contacts though.
Could you introduce yourself some more?
So I've been shooting video since I was 13. I started with skateboarding. We got into trying to do jackass stuff because we were jackasses, still are. The jackass stuff didn't work because we weren't that good at it. So we started to do like skits and stuff like that and trying to do like early YouTube ideas.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the camera was always with me. Started with camcorders, got into DSLRs, and then from there basically turned it into what I do now, which is music videos, branded content, real estate, all sorts of stuff, weddings, films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you've built up quite a portfolio working with companies like AT&T and with different people. Like I even saw that you recently did like a Megan Thee Stallion bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was actually an AT&T piece of content.
Nice. Nice. So that's
and
all
there's
connected.
a whole wild story about that.
and I would love to get into it in a bit. And a bunch of great music videos and working alongside with a previous guest of ours, Tom Flynn, too.
Yeah.
And in the same caliber. And I actually got connected with you through a mutual friend. You did a music video for her.
Yes.
And I mean, I was just impressed seeing your portfolio and even seeing that music video initially.
Oh, thank you.
So as you said, you got started when you were young, always with the camera. That's funny because that reminds me, speaking of the jackass style content, because I started, like, my background was in audio, but funny enough, when I was in high school, when we had like the flip phones and like the camcorder type stuff, we started doing something called Bad Influences, which was basically our own like early YouTube jackass style stuff with me and my bandmates, and because, also a bunch of idiots. And of course, yeah. But we didn't even go as far as, we only posted like probably an eighth of whatever we actually did, half the time, just trying to keep ourselves with the boom of YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Feeling inspired.
Well, it's funny, we're looking back on it now. Nowadays it's so easy to make content and get it out there. But like back then we were just like we had nowhere to post it.
Yeah.
There wasn't until like YouTube came around, but YouTube was very rudimentary. And the stuff we were using was, we didn't have lighting and stuff like that.
We barely knew any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I love lighting and as much as I use it now, but there is something about being given nothing and making something out of it.
Yeah.
And trying your hand at doing something with nothing without having the burden of thinking technically.
Yeah. I kind of love it's the raw creativity, especially in those early days.
Yeah.
Just because that's all that's, it's just raw creativity.
Yeah.
There's no like technical limitations in your mind yet.
Yeah.
Of what you're trying to do.
And it's funny now, when it comes to making content, we live in a very nostalgic time where people are looking to the past. They're looking at like, well, how could we shoot 6K and beat the shit out of it? You know what I mean? How can we shoot really high quality content and then add a whole bunch of grain and make it look VHS and whatever?
Yeah, you're right.
Just to give it that aesthetic. Or how could we just shoot VHS, which is something that I've done.
How do we get our hands on a Super 8? Somehow,
yeah, Super 8, yeah.
And I also noticed that even contextually, a lot of Hollywood is trying to go back to referencing stuff from the 90s and stuff from the 80s and
Yeah.
a lot of, again, very nostalgic.
I'm very excited for the next Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah,
Because there'll probably be like 5 of them. That's one thing I hate about the movie world.
Everything's turning into Fast and Furious.
Oh my god. That's one thing I hate about the movie world is like big Hollywood kind of sucks now because, there's just no creativity. They don't want to take risks on scripts that maybe the general population wouldn't like or understand.
I feel like there's been like a few that are popping up here and there, but like the media and like the marketing world is only attaching to the nostalgic.
Yeah,
Disney. I think it comes to like a big part of you almost have a guaranteed audience when you go to something that has an established audience.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's like a little bit of a cop out because you're just trying to like feed on this thing. And if you don't like, and it's always notoriously the most difficult move to make because the slightest misuse or misdemeanor of just like portraying it again, of course, destroys all your fan base because they all hate you for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's so critical too. So it's like it's funny.
Oh, you must be talking about the Sonic movie where they made him look like some ridiculous. Yeah. Like and his legs were like, I don't know what they were like. They
had to change his whole design because of the uproar.
Well, somebody who actually cared about Sonic came in and were like, okay, you have to change the legs, you have to change this. You know what I mean? It was like, and then you look at the side by side and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this guy looks
like Sonic.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so funny, like small, minuscule changes throw off how you view the character. Mm-hmm. I didn't even see that movie, so I don't care. But
I mean, I saw it. But,
yeah. But it was just
100%. Can you tell me a little more about like when was your transition into the professional world? I know you kind of grew up with a camera, but when was it like it came from being a hobby, something you like to do, to like, okay, I think this is going to be my thing. This is how I make money in my living. Yeah.
So, well, when I started, it was a little bit of skateboarding, a little bit of just having a VHS camera around me, or high 8 camera rather, and eventually as I got older, I transitioned from like camcorders, which we were using to film some skits and do like stupid little horror things with like with nothing. And then I started to get into like DSLRs when DSLRs started to first take video also. And when I got a DSLR, I started to take pictures because I mainly got it for video, but I'm like, okay, it's a photo camera, so I'm going to start taking pictures. That was something I never really did. And we were still, doing these stupid skits and any idea that we could think of, but I was approaching it in a way where I was also trying to learn, well, how do you film 2 people talking? You know what I mean? What's traditionally done, and I'm going to do that. So I kind of used these funny things that we were doing to
kind of
get
practice.
better. Yeah. And then I had a buddy that wanted to shoot some content for his band. So we did one like little lyric video. I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. Then they wanted another video. Then somebody else wanted a video. Then I had a brand approach me and I started to do brand work. And at the time I was working IT full time. And I was probably like, at that time, I was probably at the level that I would probably still be at now. I got pretty high up in that. And I had to kind of make a decision because ultimately
Would you mind me asking what position were you?
Oh, well.
In IT, I guess.
Yeah, I was working for a school district. I was working for Lawrence School District.
Okay.
So I was one of 3 guys.
Okay.
So nice. It was a pretty decent job, and it paid pretty well.
Yeah.
But I was doing this video and photo
Yeah.
stuff, and that became a full-time job in itself. So I was working this full-time job at the school district doing IT, and then going home and trying to do what I had to do with the content that I was making.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like, I kept getting all these offers and to do things that I would have to travel for and stuff like that. And then I just was like, kind of like beating myself up. And then I just was like, okay, I'm just going to do content.
Yeah.
It was a very nerve-wracking change because I'm like, my mind was telling me that as soon as I put my 2 weeks in and I'm officially done, I'm just going to be living in a box. But that's not what happens.
Because you're about to sacrifice that security of the paycheck that you know is there every week to our crazy lifestyle of like we're going from project to project.
Yeah.
And the balancing that out and
Yeah.
it fluctuates.
Yeah. So I was like, and it's ironically enough, when I did quit, two travel opportunities opened up, and I was like, and they were like, "Oh, do you think you could do them?" And I'm like, "I can, with all confidence, I can."
I'm nothing but time.
Yeah, and then after that, I've been doing it for almost 5 years now.
That's amazing. I mean, I've heard this before that like sometimes we're tested in our resolves. First, we get like something we want to do. Then we're playing with the idea, and then we get tested in it. So it's like we have to follow through because it's like if you're not available, then you can't take the opportunities. And like these opportunities are coming because you can imagine those 2 travel gigs came up, but you have to try to figure out if you can get time off for them and this and that.
Yeah, I would be so bummed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I even heard it when it comes to dating. It's like if you're choose to stay in a toxic relationship, but you can have the perfect girl, like, and the day you meet her is like this week. But if you, for some reason, prolong this toxic relationship past that day, then you could have just missed out, you know. But if it's not going to be working out, and of course, there's a lot of nuances to that. Just saying, in broad spec, you know, when you're not with the right person, you should end it because it doesn't make sense. Because that opens you up now. If you do meet the right person, you're actually available.
Yes.
You know, and the same thing with work and with a lot of things, you know, when we hold ourselves to these toxic types of relationships or just things that are like keeping from what we want, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I kudos to you because a lot of people would keep themselves trapped in that, you know?
I know. And I was very...
Because IT is a good sphere. It's a good money-making sphere. It's very secure.
But also, like, it has ties into the content world.
Yeah.
Because part of my IT career was I did data, like,
data analyst.
Well, I did, like, data management for Cablevision for a little bit as a contractor.
Nice.
So now, like, I tend to take, like, a nerdy approach into filmmaking.
Definitely
Like,
works.
backing up and just having my computer
Things organized.
Yeah.
You got your filing system in place and your naming system in place. And
Yes.
Yeah. Me and my partner Dodos talk about that all the time. We got to keep things as organized as possible, and things need to be labeled and like little things.
Well, the
like
thing that scares me is just like the unknown of like not cloud backing up and stuff like that. I don't want to get too nerdy. But that's a big thing to think about.
Backups on backups. That's always good.
Yeah.
Both cloud and physical.
And then, of course, the nerdiness for me also translates into cameras and the gear that we use.
I mean, at the end of the day, you know what's funny? It's like, and we could talk. We'll expand on this, but it's funny enough. Like, we're called cinematographers and videographers and all these different names. And but like I came from a world where I was known as an audio engineer, you know. And when I came to this world, I found so many parallels. I'm like, this is literally the same thing, but dealing with the visual instead of the audible. But I'm like, why? But in one sphere, I'm an engineer. In another sphere, I'm not. Like, I feel like in this case, we're also engineers because we are one thing where, we are manipulating light. We have to have a fundamental basis knowledge of how light shapes, colors, and affects an entire scene. Same thing with the different levels of art, of course, composition, different things like that. But then there's so much technical aspects because of the tools we have. We're like wiring things. We have to make sure all the minute settings in the camera, each thing does something different. We're calculating based on our scene what the ISO, shutter speed, aperture, all that has to balance out a certain way depending on our goals.
Yeah.
And of course, all the extra equipment on top that, like, oh, maybe we need a rig. So we're trying to figure out how do we get a stabilizer, a gimbal, and the camera to work with this specific monitor and get it all powered. And then, and all this to make sure that we get our creative shot. And do we need to manipulate things with just a 5x1, or do we need to bring in some 600Ds, or do we want a diffuser? Do we want a grid on it? Like,
Yeah. And then we're also trying to create like a story
Yeah.
too. It's like great. Yeah, everything well, especially if, I mean, on a bigger set, there would be like this guy, here's the goal that we anticipate in getting. This guy's going to do the lighting. This guy's going to do that.
yeah,
I don't come from that world. I come from a
Yeah.
very raw world of like, grab the fucking camera and go,
Yeah.
And I kind of like that because it helps me think off, it helps me think on my feet. But coming from like the IT world and a very technical world, I apply that to filmmaking in that, like, I'm very particular with what I want to do, with what lens I want to put on, or what setting I want to dial into the camera.
Is
You know what I
there a
mean?
particular tool that you think it's invaluable, or that maybe people don't use enough that they should be?
Yeah, I
use?
mean, false color is definitely a good one because that basically just paints a picture of how the light's going to look on somebody. So, like, you would see, okay, this is where my level is. Do I need to increase? Do I need to go down? That, like, using a tool like false color, it puts you right in the range of where you need to be. And by doing something like that, you could really make any camera look good. Me and my buddy Anthony have been shooting films on the iPhone. And I got involved with him. He was like 40% done with his first film, and it was all iPhone. And I came in. I was supposed to be just doing drone, but I ended up shooting
Yeah.
and then just sticking by his side for the rest of the film. And then obviously in editing, and that film's been out. It's got 12 awards.
Amazing.
Now we're on to the second one, and we're sticking with the tradition of just using an iPhone. And we use an app called Filmic Pro on the iPhone.
I'm familiar. Great app.
And false color right in there.
Yeah.
And now we're going with this next one. We're going with a darker look. So more stuff shot at night. So now I'm
Really testing the low light.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. Like, the iPhone sensor is so small, so it
Yeah.
needs a lot of light. So we're pushing those. We're pushing the lights. But it's cool to see. And I also built like a mount now where you can put vintage lenses on the iPhone, which is cool. So we're doing a lot of the mid shots with like old Canon lenses.
Oh, so you this is like a custom little mount you
Yeah,
figured out.
I'll show you a picture.
Oh man, that's insane. So
We were just in Austin. We were shooting because one of the actors was there, and we had to get a bunch of scenes. We were supposed to do it in California, but we ended up having to circle back and do it in Austin. But over there we shot a lot of dialogue. We shot like our first dialogue scenes for this sequel movie, and looks cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, just to paint a picture, basically an iPhone with, I guess, with some form of case, and then this old vintage lens just attached to
Yep,
where
with
the
an
camera is.
adapter. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Like with the modern day, now that cameras at the even the consumer level are getting up there, like almost cinema grade cameras are way more affordable, I would say, nowadays, with even like Red at the more top tier but low tier professional, and then you got Black Magic there now, way more affordable than that
Yeah.
with their sensors.
I
But then with the iPhone and people doing amazing content with
Yeah,
like
I mean, I
iPhone
think
and
it's
stuff like
I
that.
think it's good because it allows everybody to tell a story with and not have to have a whole bunch of shit or think that they need a whole bunch of shit. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It definitely changed the industry, and when things become more affordable and you don't need as big a team to do it, it obviously shifts the industry in a new direction, which has ups and downs. For me, it doesn't have any
Course.
downs because I don't come from the film world. I've
Yeah.
never really worked on. I think I had like 2 experiences working as a first AC,
Yeah.
and I hated it. You know,
I got you. Yeah.
because
Because it's almost like we're kind of like taking a step back. You're coming from being like the director and DP,
yeah,
and now getting like, okay, you're put into this specialized role, but it's like,
and I
I
kind
can
of exactly, and I kind of like the last time I was doing a first AC job, I just kind of sat there and like looked around. I'm like, who actually has heart in what we're doing here? There's so many people running around with their head up their ass, and I'm like, who is like saying, this looks awesome, this is great? Like, who's actually like, I don't know. It just seemed like there was a disconnect,
yeah,
and nobody was really like passionate about it.
yeah. No, having
And
like,
actually, that film that I worked on apparently never even got made. So
oh
it was like
really?
a 30 grand blow,
That's crazy to hear.
which was
Yeah.
ridiculous because I'm like, I'm like, I could have did that with like 3 guys. We could have did that thing, and the actors,
Yeah.
it
I mean,
happens.
I guess that's the nature of like once you get that big level,
Yeah,
and there, because it becomes less about you creating something and more about what like the producers will sign off on and all.
yeah,
Because for them it's just a tax write off. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Just nix it.
yeah, which seems so wild to me. But I do appreciate that. I appreciate that somebody like Blackmagic makes these cameras that are so affordable for everybody. I
Yeah.
always recommend them. Obviously, the file size is a bit scary, but I mean, if you think about it, you can get a Blackmagic for like nothing and have everything you need
Yeah.
to be a filmmaker. Do you have to get a Blackmagic? No. You could use an iPhone.
Use a
But
Canon.
yeah,
Sony,
you can use a Canon, Sony, Fujifilm, whatever you
Yeah.
need.
And even like, and you mentioned this beforehand when we were talking earlier, how like, but still at the end of the day, it's the file sizes are smaller than the Reds and
Yeah.
and the bigger ones. And now, an interesting development, speaking of the changing industry, is like even Nikon now has a way of recording uncompressed RAW, similar to Red. Because Red used to have that like almost a monopoly over the industry with their copyright on their format. But Nikon
Yeah.
has officially found a way in to keep
Yeah.
their format,
Yeah.
which is probably going to now reintroduce all the other camera companies to find their own way if they can replicate what
Yeah.
Nikon did.
There- yeah, as one company does it, everybody ends
Yeah.
up doing it because
Which
now
makes-
it's like a race. I think what we're going to see in the coming years is like a slowdown.
Yeah.
Like
In what
I
sense?
just in technology, I mean, there's already like a race to have an 8K camera.
Hmm.
And 8K doesn't look cinematic, at least to me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if
Interesting.
it's Planet Earth, okay, I'd want to. I don't even smoke weed, but I'd want to get high and just watch Planet Earth in 8K.
Yeah, well,
But for most film now, it's about not being too sharp. I don't like a sharp look,
yeah.
which is why, like, when it comes to like lenses and stuff like that, I like to experiment with filters. I like to buy vintage lenses from the 70s. I like to dabble in shooting anamorphic, where things look really wild and really nutty.
I love it.
What?
I love it.
Yeah. I spent a little bit of time during the pandemic building like DIY anamorphic lenses. So what that means, you're familiar with anamorphic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
how does one build a DIY?
yeah. So basically, anamorphic, really quick, is basically a way to shoot widescreen on a square aspect ratio film. And it was they were looking for ways in the past to make a widescreen image. I forgot which one. Cinerama was like where they put 3 cameras, one that was like that sat in the middle and then 2 on the sides, and they would stitch them together and make a wide image. That didn't work. That looked terrible. I mean, back then they probably surprised everybody, and then they were like, okay, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Anamorphic is a way to get a wide image onto a square 4:3. Well, not technically square, but a 4:3 piece of film. So what they would do is they would shoot with an anamorphic lens on the front of the camera, and then after they stitch the movie together and then it's time for projecting, they would put another lens on the front of the projector that when the image is shot back
Yes.
out, it would now project in a wider fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you can do is you can find these old projector anamorphic lenses, and you can get vintage lenses like Zeiss primes and some of the Canon FDs, which I have, and you could basically take that projector lens and just stick it on the front, and now you have an anamorphic lens with some character and with some, some interesting, get an interesting look from it.
Nice. What have you used that to shoot?
I've actually used it on at least 3 music videos and 2 promos.
Really?
Yeah. And it's just some personal stuff that I've shot.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. And I'm sure you've gotten some real interesting results.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of flaring. Not totally sharp. You almost get it depends on what projector lens you're using on these. They all have like a different characteristic. Some flare more. Some are really sharp. I have 3 of them, and I have two projector lenses that are very sharp, and they're nice. And I actually had to clean the coating off the lens to get them to flare. And then there's another one that almost gives you like a Blade Runner look, where like the edges have like a aberration, like a chromatic aberration to them. They're not totally sharp.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool. I like stuff like that. I like going back and watching older films and seeing what was considered like an aberration then.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah. Try to go back and see.
Yeah, try to like pull in some. I always add grain to anything that I do. I think that's
part of your look.
Yeah, I like
your style.
when things look a little grainy.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's definitely like an aesthetic, and it sounds like that you definitely have your own style, and you put a lot of that creative aspect too.
Yeah.
Even though you say you're a technical person too, it's like I sense a lot of passion and creativity in there too, and not afraid to push certain boundaries.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you have your own style. That's this is the look. If you work with me, this is probably what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And is there any particular client or project that you would say is very was very exciting, notable, or like just a real good.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that I did the Meg the Stallion one, which was
Yeah.
that was definitely notable. It was definitely a wacky
Tell us about
ride.
it.
Yeah.
Love to hear about it.
So it was just supposed to be like an AT&T thing of her just in front of a blue backdrop, just talking to the camera, and
Which I do now remember had a very vintage look to it.
yes. So there's a story behind that. So basically, so it was supposed to be her in front of this blue backdrop talking to the camera,
Yeah.
right? And we were supposed to get 20 minutes to shoot this, right?
Wow.
2 days before, this was all at college football. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This was all at March Madness in Houston, Texas, this
Okay.
past February. And, this past March, rather. So we were supposed to have 20 minutes with her, and she was going to do this in front of a black backdrop. It was going to be very boring. And they didn't like that idea, which I was like, her team didn't like that idea, which I was like, okay, thank God. So the other idea that me and one of the creatives had tossed around is to have her with this phone, and she would be picking up and talking to the audience, right?
Yeah. It was like a rotary phone.
Yeah. Yep. And it would be and it would be like a little bit more of like a story, if you will, you know. It's not just her on a backdrop, right? And she's also doing the concert, so that was a way to mix in the concert footage. But basically, we were supposed to have 20 minutes. Then they were like, okay, we don't want to do this. We have to do something else. So we had to draw something else up. That's what we drew up. They took forever, and they were like, okay, she'll do it, but you'll only have 10 minutes, right? Then we get a text message like a couple of hours before, she's not going to be able to do it. And then they were like, oh, no, she can do it 10 minutes. It was like such a roller coaster ride until the point where we're in this room where I'm like, I don't even know if we're going to get good audio in this room because it's right next to the stage.
Oh, man.
But she wouldn't walk 150 feet. Okay. So I'm like in this room, like, oh, I hope we can fucking do this because it doesn't seem like she's interested in any of this. So she gets into the room. We had to get a mic on her. So I had her team get the mic on her. She was, and so she gets the mic on, and literally like I hit record, and when I hit record again to stop the camera, it was 4 minutes, and she was out of that room. We had to shoot that thing in 4 minutes. She gave us one take of the whole thing, and then I was like, I need a shot of her saying this, I need a shot of her saying that, and then just a couple of close-ups, and I left that room, and then she was out of the room in 4 minutes. This is literally the raw clip, and I left that was the last thing I was shooting that day, and I left that room, and I was like, and I had to edit it, so I'm like, I don't know what the fuck we just shot. So the PA's talking to me. He's like, "Where do you want me to put the lighting?" And I'm like, not even. I'm like,
you're not even conscious
in
anymore.
the van. Just throw it. I took all my gear back to the hotel room, and I'm like, I gotta start cutting something because I need to know that this can work.
Yeah.
For something, even though the producer was like, if it didn't work, that wouldn't have been on me. But since I'm shooting it and editing it, I'm like, now my mind's working. Like I'm thinking about all the negatives. Like, do I even have something to edit here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 minutes. Wow.
So I put a VHS look on it because I noticed that, speaking of nostalgia, I noticed that Meg the Stallion's behind the scenes video guy is only VHS. He's shooting on VHS. And I went to her to like creative manager. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's using VHS. She's like, we love the VHS look. We love like old film looks. So I was like, okay, probably should go that route.
Yeah, that was a good note to pick up.
So basically the idea was like, it's somebody picking up the phone. You kind of know it's Meg just by her voice, but at the end we reveal that it's her.
Yeah.
And it's her not technically talking directly to the audience and on a backdrop. It's her talking to like an unknown party about how all that she did at the AT&T block party, and at the end she gives her like
Yeah, I mean, I saw the spot.
yeah. But I had to do that with 4 minutes of footage.
I was about to say, I saw the spot. I would have never guessed that was like a
Oh,
a 4 minute
I'll
take.
send you the raw clip, and you'll be like, shit.
Wow. Talk
Actually,
about.
it's funny. I showed Tom the raw clip, and he's like, man. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean,
That was definitely I wasn't like, something like that gets me not nervous, but I'm like, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Of course I'm excited, but I'm more excited when I have the final product, because I'm like thinking, you know what I mean?
It really shows that your ability, as a creative, like it's creative problem solving. You
Yeah.
know? It's a lot like music,
Yeah.
You're reacting to things. It's like, hey, this is what I have to work with.
Yep.
And how do I make it work? Because it's happening. It's right now,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I need to do something because
Yes.
I'm holding the ball right now.
Yeah.
I have to do something with this, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it's good.
There's always going to be problems with everything.
Yeah.
I write a lot of ideas, and I always try to like write out, this is impossible. We'll never have a problem, but there's always a problem. But it's the bigger things where I'm like, is this a problem?
Yeah.
So walking away with all that footage, 4 minutes, I'm like, I don't know if it's a problem, but I also don't know what the hell is going to go on here.
Yeah.
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 So I like to think about all that. I guess that's like a negative, thinking about all the negative things that can happen.
Yeah, but you don't let it hold you back, it seems like.
What is that?
You don't let it hold you back.
Well, because I'm just thinking, well, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If that happens, I'm going to do that. I'm like planning all the, but you also shouldn't do that. But
I mean, I think I like that perspective because you're also not like, oh no, all this is going to happen. You're also not like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You're like, you're more so thinking of contingency plans. So I was like, okay, I'm going into this and I know, okay, what can happen? Oh, well, if this happens, well, you know what? I can make that work if I do this. If this happens, I can make that work if I did this. I can bypass that. If this goes, I can finagle this. Oh, if this camera dies, I mean, I still have camera angle 2 and 3. I could always cut to if any case, this and that. I was like, so you build contingencies, and I think that's a smart way to work. I think it's bad when people like flood themselves with all the negative possibilities with zero solutions. And they let that get themselves frozen in like this sea of like, and so much can go wrong and I have no way to do with it.
Yeah, and that's bad, because when you deal with actors and you deal with like people that are around you, you don't want to show that there's a problem.
No.
So like if there is a problem, I'll hide it.
Yeah.
And because when you're dealing with actors that are trying to get into a character or just dealing with like a client who's there, there's always a workaround. It may change the result, but there's always a workaround, and you never kill the mood.
Yeah.
I'm a big mood person, so I try to feel the room out, and I try to feel the people that I work with out, and just try to be on a personable level with them, which is important, because I see like all these like life coaches are like, how to land the client on LinkedIn, and I'm like, you talk to them. That's how you land the fucking client. I don't need some life coach thing. I don't need to go to your seminar. I actually see that. That's a big part of like being a videographer on Instagram, is like I get these sponsored ads that are like, we're going to show you how to land your biggest client yet.
Yeah.
And then you go to like their profile and you're like, what has this guy even shot? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so bizarre to me.
It just goes back to, it's like you said, you talk to them, but the biggest thing is the mood.
Exactly.
You make them feel good. People want to work with people they feel good. If you were to go on a job, and yes, it's not about, like I said, it's not about if something goes wrong, it's when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But the whole time, you are working the problem. You're the technician here. You're the engineer. You're the professional in this field. The client isn't. The actors aren't. Whatever. You know, you resolve it, but you hold face. The client the whole time is like, you're just like, oh, this happens. We're gonna make this pivot. It's gonna be good. This is just how it's gonna be. There more times than not, if they see you calm, cool, and collected about it, they're like, okay, but they pretty much take it. They like working with you, and you work back and forth. I bet you that even if the end result changed slightly for whatever the reason, they will come back to you every time, because if they go to someone who's like a perfectionist who doesn't know how to talk to the client, it makes it feel very aggravated, or someone who can get a little panicky, at at the pin drop, and so the client feels like you have no stance on what you're doing. They want to feel good through the whole experience. They want to feel like, I'm working with someone who knows what they're doing, and can, no matter what happens, I'm still going to get something good, because he's going to take care of me and he's going to figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah. And same with the actors. It's like, okay, I don't need to worry if I'm going to look good on camera. I just need to worry about what I'm doing on camera.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about the cameraman getting making my best take completely out of focus the whole time, like stuff like that, because if they feel unconfident in you, then they're thinking about that stuff on top of what they're already thinking about. So it's like you said, the mood is so important.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, you just talk to people. You want to come off professional, but you want to just make them feel good. People want to work with people. It's like,
I also like to
have a good time.
I like to meet people and talk to people and understand people. You know what I mean? Because it also helps me think of stories and think of ideas, and it's part of what we do.
I think
this is like a conversational, profession.
Yeah.
I
think it's creatives. That's a big part of the creative, especially if you're making something for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of pulling.
You need to get in their head.
Exactly.
Extrapolate their vision and how it translates to what we do. And
sometimes change their vision.
Well, I would say help them evolve.
Yes,
their
exactly.
Vision. Evolve it. Because of course, whereas the professionals, sometimes people need a little guidance. In that department.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of that, that's funny that you mentioned that, because we've had our fair share of that. Yeah, any particular ones where you had kind of like this interesting proposal from a client, and you kind of had to help them guide into a more mutually beneficial vision, or just really help them get what they want versus what they thought they wanted? Because that's interesting. I think a lot
you were going to ask if I've ever shot a porn. I thought that's where that question was going. But say that one more time.
Well, just
help them.
Yeah, get their vision right, in the sense that sometimes people think they know what they want, but once they explain kind of what their end goal is, and then what they're asking for, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't match the way you think it matches.
Yeah, nothing notable. I mean,
well, how do you navigate that conversation then?
Yeah, I mean, basically, when somebody approaches me, the first question is what do you want to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And then, some people have no idea, so I have to just figure everything out, which I don't mind doing. Some people have an idea, especially with music videos. They know, oh, this is what we see in our head when we wrote the song, versus I have no idea. So it's basically I'll take notes and then kind of flush their idea out onto paper and see where it needs things added. And then read it as a whole and say, okay, maybe I change it up. And then I'll usually send them a changed version and explain why
you wrote that.
Hey, and I've never had any pushback or anything. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, if we could just add this, if we could add that.
I think that's reasonable.
Nothing that stands out.
I think also it's correct me if I'm wrong, I think you really take it where you're really trying to serve the client.
Yeah.
So it's like when you do the changes and stuff, it's really in their best interest.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know?
I think that most people understand that. I've never had like a nightmare client that
Yeah.
that has been like,
I think if you come off the right way, you kind of attract.
yeah.
Like people can sense that. I think maybe some people, sometimes what I've seen is that some people can struggle with, I have a creative vision and I want to use your project to pursue my creative vision.
Yeah.
And that I don't think that really ever works out very
Yeah,
well.
no.
You gotta like, if you're going in for work, you really gotta serve the client and their
Yes.
vision.
Yeah. And try to give them the best piece of content. I always try to like maximize the content. Also, like I'll do a couple of different edits, send them a bunch of stills. Like I just did something with Wolfer Winery. We did a few edits and send a bunch of stills that I liked that I'd probably post on Instagram.
Oh, nice.
I always try to, you know, obviously it's always contracted. We're gonna do a 60-second this, but I always try to go above and beyond and do, like,
Give them
hey,
a little extras here and there.
I'll make an extra edit because I think it might look cool.
Yeah.
If they use it, they use it. If they don't, they don't.
I think that's...
Because then things like that is like where they'll be like, oh, this is awesome. Like,
Yeah. I think when you over deliver in that sense, I think it's what stands you out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what makes you even more enjoyable to work with, because it's like you gave it 100 on what they asked for, and then you added that extra 10-20%, and it's,
yeah.
I don't think also, like, some people when they think about going above and beyond, I think they go like thinking way too big about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let me make another video. Like, no, not necessarily. You can make just another edit, or take your favorite stills that you think are
I
like
almost always
post-worthy.
do that.
Yeah.
Because I also like, you know, I like to enjoy the content that I make.
Mm-hmm.
I like to try to do something different every time. And
No, that's an interesting idea. I think
So,
that's
I
really
mean,
helpful to help
yeah.
you stand out.
I
And-
like to archive all the footage. So I literally have the first project I've ever shot, and I don't know why I do that.
I think that's a good habit. I love it.
Yeah, because I'm like, I like all this stuff, and it's like digital hoarding. Hoarder is the digital version. That would be a boring show, actually.
I mean, depending on the content,
Yeah.
it could also be a very scary show.
Yeah, it actually could, yeah.
With digital content. Oh man, that's a rabbit hole and a half.
Yeah.
Oh man, was there?
I think there was a question. I don't know if I'm allowed to bring up a question.
You could, hey, if you.
I
What, for
think
me?
you guys asked me off air what cameras I started with.
Yeah,
Pretty much the line of cameras.
100%.
Yeah, so the first ever camera I had was a Panasonic 8 high 8 camera.
Okay, yep,
camcorder.
yep.
And that I had for years. I actually still have it, and it still works.
Amazing.
After that, I got another Sony camcorder, and I had a bunch of different. I had like 2 or 3 different Sony camcorders that I bought that we used to film like all the Jackass stuff. You know, like whatever we were
Doing it.
trying to do. We were doing more. I say Jackass, but it's more like our own skits and funny bits. And then I got what was it? I think it was a Canon 60D. That was my first DSLR. And that was cool. And then I moved up to I think it was a 70D.
Nice.
And that's
I started with the 90D.
the 90D.
Yeah.
I don't even know that. Yeah, and then after that, I got into when I first went full time, the cameras that I was shooting was the GH5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard
Panasonic.
really good things. From
Yeah,
the
it was a great
GH5.
camera.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got the Blackmagics. I have a 4K and 2 6Ks, and then I have a Panasonic full frame, an S5, which I really like too.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about the S5 and that whole the S series from Panasonic. Yeah.
I've always loved the colors of Panasonic. They could literally match pretty much any camera. You can get them to match any camera, and yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear.
So when I use the GH5, I'm like, okay, the S5 is like the full frame version of the GH5, and it actually is. You know, a lot of those old color profiles that I had created when I was shooting with the GH5 apply to the S5.
Oh,
Which
that's
is interesting. You know, with
super
you have
convenient,
to, yeah,
though,
you
you
have
know?
to tune a little bit, but yeah.
well, that lucked out. That's pretty good. When you can literally transfer like those types of presets, you know?
Yeah. Like stuff that you've used in the past, like stuff that you've created in the past.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is coloring. So a lot of people will send me their projects. That's like a service that I do also.
How's your view on coloring? Like what would you say is like, because I know a lot of people kind of have different philosophies when it comes to coloring. Some people are like, I need to get it as like real life as possible. Some people are more like, I'm trying to tell a story by the mood with
Yeah,
color.
well, it
Some people,
depends. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean,
So
I've done some full length films, some feature films color, and that is very much coming at it from like a film standpoint, and even in music videos it's basically just trying to determine what you want the mood to be. If it's I don't like when things look too realistic, you know. I
yeah,
like a lot of like pastel colors and stuff like that. But I don't like when things look too overly sharp.
yeah,
That's a problem with like full frame cameras. Is I noticed that like there's sometimes in content that I've seen like there's just too much depth, and it almost like and the edges are too sharp where it almost looks like they're on like a green screen or something.
okay,
So that's something that I don't really like. And then I also don't really
do you feel like that makes it less cinematic?
a little bit. I
Yeah,
mean, just in my taste.
yeah, no,
Yeah. Like it doesn't feel like I call it the green screen. I think other people call it the green screen effect, but it almost
yeah,
feels like they're just like digitally added in.
yeah. It almost makes
So
it
you don't have like
the
that
irony. It makes it
softness of an
more
edge.
unreal.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at films, they're not that there's unless they're shooting longer lenses, they're not typically they don't typically have that much depth on like say a 28 millimeter lens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you go
True.
back in film, there's like a softness to the edges that helps portray that like cinematic look.
Yeah.
But yeah, but color is definitely like a mood thing for me.
No, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely more of an artistic approach, more of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
visual storytelling
Yeah.
to the
Because it
whole
all
mix.
and also like it also helps drive what whoever was shooting, if it's my stuff, whoever was shooting on set or on location, helps drive the overall look
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular, any projects coming up that you're particularly excited about?
Well, in July, not too far away. I'm gonna be going to the women's NBA in Vegas, shooting a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are you shooting for?
For actually AT&T.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, another one.
Another commercial spot?
Yep. Yeah. I've been working with a winery out on Long Island. I've been working with a bunch of different companies actually.
Nice.
Yeah. A lot. There's always projects moving.
That's good. That's good. Okay. I have to ask this because I was thinking about this earlier.
Yeah.
Was when you started to get a lot of these like travel gigs, you said people were reaching out to you in the beginning.
Yep.
Was it? Did you really? Would you say most of these gigs were just people seeing your work and asking you about it, or were you really like also at the same time reaching out to brands and companies offering your services?
No, I'd never really like offer myself up.
Yeah.
I kind of feel weird about that. Not gonna lie. I just interact with people. Like, so I'll
Okay.
interact
So
with
you just
brands.
network.
I don't even talk about I just let them see my profile, and if it interests them, it interests them.
But you do reach out and communicate with them.
Yeah, sometimes like if it's like somebody following me, or I'll always reach out or start a conversation. And if they can benefit from some work, then they'll benefit. But a lot of it is word of mouth, and I try to always like keep a good attitude on set, because then people want to be around you.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you like solve problems, because then they're like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
if he's there,
You know,
can,
anything that goes wrong, he'll figure it
yeah,
out.
yeah. I don't know if I'm that person, but it's good to kind of try to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, based on like just seeing your direction and seeing what you have done and hearing that and just meeting you and speaking to you, I could definitely see that it speaks to just how you make people feel. Just like leaving it all on the field, and people probably feel that you're dependable and just easy to work with, good to work with. So, and because for me, like when it comes to word of mouth, that's a testament to that. Like people only
Yeah.
speak about people they actually enjoyed, and
Yeah.
that's the only people they would recommend. And to hear that most of your work came from that really speaks to the value of being that type of a hard worker, just being out there. But also, I think it's a good tip too, just having those interactions, being okay with opening up dialogue.
Yep.
Don't have to be
Yeah.
salesy. You don't have to be like, hey,
Yeah, I'm like totally not.
no.
So.
So
I
you're just
hate
like, hey,
numbers
I
and
like your
hate,
product. I like this thing. I'll thank
Yeah.
you for following me, this and that. And then they'll naturally get curious, see your profile, and if it can benefit, great. If not, no.
Yep.
I got one more question for you.
Final question.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, shit. No, I didn't shoot a porn. No.
No. No. Did you?
No.
Almost. Oh, man. Okay. I don't think we have enough time for that one. I was going to say, is there anything in particular that you wish you kind of knew, or you could have told yourself in the beginning that now through experience that you could have known, like wish you knew back when you were starting out, and starting out more like professionally?
Yeah. Just believe in yourself and take the risk. There's plenty of things that I could say that I would have wanted to do different, but I think coming from where I ended up now, I don't think I would want to do anything different except just keep taking risks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, makes sense. I think that's simple but powerful.
I think there is like a ladder you have to climb to get to where you are. So I don't even know what I would tell myself. You know what I mean? Probably all the nerdy stuff, but that's that ladder that you climb.
Yeah. It's like, okay, start learning false color. Start.
Yeah,
like all that
like
stuff.
Yeah.
Just get this camera.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times where I question. I'm like, is this, like, how sustainable is this? And it's almost like your negative self talking to you. You know? So it's like that has been a thing that I would tell myself, shun those ideas. And just know that you're on, like, you care about what you do and you enjoy what you do. At least for me, I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And that's really it. That's probably all I would tell myself. I don't want to know too much into the future.
I got you. Yeah.
I like to think. I like to hang on to the edge of the seat.
Yeah.
And not know where the hell you're going to end up.
Live life on the edge.
Whether it's a McDonald's parking lot or a Carvel, you never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on. And where can the good people find you online if they want to see your work?
Instagram, at James Morano, or jamesmorano.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
And of course, you can always find us at the Vision Maker Podcast and our other exploits with Vision Maker Productions. And thank you so much for being on.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And until next time.